I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some really good breaking news. I mean, it happened a couple hours ago from this point now, but so maybe you've heard about it, but the Supreme Court upheld a Tennessee ban on transing the children, so minors cannot get hormones and gender-affirming surgery, and the libs, of course, are upset about it. But this is good news because obviously it's harming children for something that's not real and true. You cannot. I always like to define it as chasing a pot of gold at the end of a never-ending rainbow. And a lot of kids, if you leave them to their own devices, they will grow out of gender dysphoria. There's people who are being fast-tracked into this, haven't been properly diagnosed, or they find someone who will just affirm them. And then there's parents who are really into, I don't know, ideology, looking to be special, looking for some kind of victim status, because otherwise they would just be, you know, privileged white people, I guess. So they get dragged into this ideology, and it just becomes part of them so strongly. And unfortunately, there's been children who have been harmed, like Chloe Cole. She's been very happy today for this win, because she, as a minor, was on hormones and chopped off her breasts, and she obviously doesn't have them. So we do need to protect kids. Maybe we'll be seeing Congress move in a direction to try to ban it outright. Nothing's like that is going to happen, I think, until the big, beautiful bill is done and passed. But we'll see what happens. That might be the next sort of push that's out there. But that's good news. Also, Whoopi Goldberg, there's this clip from The View going around that is just stunning. Just stunning. She was arguing with her co-host about Iran. And basically, she was saying that Iran isn't worse than America if you're Black. And it's just such an absurd moment. I don't think it'll cause as much controversy as when she said something about the Jews and why Hitler targeted them. That was a big controversy, and she was like, you know, removed for 2 weeks from ABC. I don't think it'll be that big of a scandal, if it's a scandal at all, because she's paid to say dumb things all the time. But it's just so out of touch, so detached from reality. And she just has no right to, I guess she has the right to believe what she wants to believe, but it's just so detached. And I saw it when I first watched the clip. I'll show you guys. I was so angry watching it. It was just so absurd. It was just so absurd. But we'll be talking about that. And if there's time, I haven't watched the Tucker interview with Ted Cruz. If I was Ted Cruz, I probably wouldn't have did an interview with Tucker, but I want to show the snippet that Tucker decided to release last night. And if there's anything more juicy that I end up watching, I'll let you guys know later. But anyway, before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys, go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream, run the site, all that good stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it, and appreciate you guys. You guys can check out different merch. It's also available on the website, different t-shirts and so on, so you guys can check out that stuff. You guys can check out also some of the books that I've written. I have 18 that are published altogether. So I encourage you guys to, if you go to the website, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website, but there's a link in the description if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube that'll take you to an Amazon page where you guys can see my stuff. So go ahead and check it out. A lot of people out there like to get Super Kid for the kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews. I do have, nonfiction books and also books for older readers. A lot of people like my Color of God's Eye series, but go ahead, check that out on your own time, guys. I do also want to remind you that my sister is running a special on her website, tinastextportraits.com. If you want some text portraits, she has a really good Trump and Reagan and Lincoln. And if you got a lefty in your life, you give them the Obama. But those are all done by hand, not on a computer. Like she actually writes, she makes the image out of their name. And so the Trump just says, Trump over and over and over again until she makes a face. He actually has that portrait. I told you guys that he kind of swiped it, but he doesn't have the original. But he has one that we are hoping to get signed for other reasons. I won't go into that story, but you will have the same portrait that Trump does. So that'll be neat. But it's 30% off if you do birthday 30. So I want to encourage you guys to go ahead and support her. Anyway, let's hop to it. I'll try to go through this story quickly. This article, I don't know how long it is. I'm going to read from the National Review article about it, but it's a huge win. I saw the folks from Daily Wire celebrating because they broke some stories about transing the minors in Tennessee, and that's where most of them live out there now. And it's a big win. They really started shifting things on the culture with like what is a woman and so on. I was always very much, you can't be those things just because you think that you are. I'm not using your pronouns. Go in the right bathroom. Don't play on the sports team. I was always very uncompromising about it. So it is rewarding to see so many things come around and different people come around. There's different journalists. Like if you see Megyn Kelly, or now Dr. Phil, they're, more like have taken a turn or whatever. But I'm like, oh, weren't adamant before. I've always been here. But very glad about this decision. So the Supreme Court handed down this morning the most closely watched case in the term, United States versus Skrmetti, affirming a Tennessee law banning gender-affirming treatments for minors such as puberty blockers and hormone therapy for gender dysphoria. The court's 6-3 opinion, written by Chief Justice Roberts over the dissents of the 3 liberals, concluded that Tennessee's law did not discriminate on the basis of sex or transgenderism and therefore needed to satisfy only rational basis review, which it did. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Samuel Alito, and Clarence Thomas would have gone further to agree with the Sixth Circuit that transgenderism is not a suspect classification at all, and therefore all laws dealing with transgender issues need pass only the lenient rational basis test. Roberts and the majority left that question open for another day, befitting the Chief Justice's preference for judicial minimalism and incrementalism, but encouraging further litigation of these issues. Thomas also added a blistering attack on the effort by Justice Sonia Sotomayor's dissent to shut down Democratic lawmaking in this area on the say-so of experts. When I saw Alito, wrote the decision, I'm like, it's probably not going to go far enough. Because he is, when there was the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, he was like, can't we just find some kind of middle? And the more conservative people and the actual conservatives and we're like, no, we don't need to find a middle with this. And the liberals were like, no, we don't want to like split the baby here. But he's so he I don't know, weak-willed. I don't know. I guess we'll just say and he's minimalistic or whatever. We'll just use those technical nice terms, but Anyway, the decision is a win for realism over ideology. The court declined to blind itself to sex differences, to how medical practice works in this or other areas, or to the uncertain science in this area, and it refused to subordinate itself to any unelected expert class. Scrimeti arose out of lawsuits by 3 transgender minors, their parents, and a doctor, joined by the Biden administration against a 2023 Tennessee law SB 1. The Trump administration reversed the government's course on the case after it came to office, but it had already been argued, and the court found that the individual challengers had standing to sue, so the about face by the Solicitor General due to the change of administrations didn't formally affect the outcome. Whether some of the justices read the tea leaves from the election on transgender issues is anybody's guess. Even discussing transgender controversies present thorny issues of language. The court's opinion began by discussing how people identify as transgender, meaning that their gender identity does not align with their biological sex, but also some transgender individuals suffer from gender dysphoria, a medical condition characterized by persistent clinically significant distress resulting from an incongruence between gender identity and biological sex. Left untreated, gender dysphoria may result in severe physical and psychological harms. Of course, whether transgenderism is an identity or medical condition is a crucial definitional question. And I think the activists have really done themselves a disservice the more they try to broaden the definition of transgenderism and really keep pumping out this gender identity stuff instead of it being, they get really offended if you're like, it's a mental illness. Well, there is something wrong with your mind that's making this discomfort with the rest of your body. And you think that it's so severe that you want to actually alter your body to try to match what you're feeling in your mind. And people nowadays will say, well, you can be trans without, if you say you're a woman, you feel like a woman, then that makes you a woman. You say you're such, and you like that gender is a performance. And if you're adhering to those social cultural performances and you say that you're a woman, like that's how you feel, then that's like good enough. Like you don't even have to commit to doing all the surgeries and so on. If you don't want to, you grow out your hair long and basically be a cross-dresser. And if you say you're a woman, then you're a trans woman, unless she causes too much trouble, like Lily Tino, who's this creep who keeps going into restaurants waiting to be misgendered, or he's gone into bathrooms at Disney World. He's like a Disney World lurker. He's like all over TikTok, but maybe you've seen Lily somewhere. But I think his real name is Nick. And people are now trying to say, I think he's cosplaying. He's not actually trans. He is just as legitimate as every other male who says he's a woman. He's just as legitimate. His claim is just as silly. It's just as silly. Or it's just, it's silly if people decide that he's not a woman and other men who say that they're women are women, and you take them at their word. You can understand if someone has just kind of a break in reality. It doesn't make it real, but they're the ones who wanted to broaden this definition instead of it being this is a real mental illness. And there are repercussions with that. Like if you just say I feel like a woman, therefore I want to be a woman, that's not a good enough reason to play in women's sports, to go into women's spaces, etc., etc. So I think like the Bostock decision, for example, needs to be overturned, and which Clarence Thomas had pointed out, and we'll see. But Roberts just wasn't going to go far enough. Anyway, Roberts went on to walk through the history of how global health groups first restricted hormonal and surgical gender change treatments to adults in 1979, then loosened that guidance to rare circumstances in 1998, then further relaxed the guidance, which continued to evolve. European countries have significantly reassessed their views since 2020. SB 1 responded to similar concerns about irreversible treatments, banning surgeries or puberty blockers for minors, but allowing such treatments for adults. The court emphasized that it was hesitant to set a constitutional rule in stone while the science remained fluid, noting the 2024 CAS report from England's National Health Service as a reason why recent developments only underscore the need for legislative flexibility in this area in light of open questions regarding basic factual issues before medical authorities and other regulatory bodies. Because none of the plaintiffs had standing to challenge SB 1's ban on surgeries, that part of the law dropped out of the case and was not enjoined by the district court, but the ban on hormonal therapies exempted the use of hormones to treat minors' congenital defect, precocious or early puberty, disease, or physical injury. That exemption was the focus of the case as it came to the court. As Roberts reminded the reader, quoting Justice Anthony Kennedy in Romer versus Evans, 1996, drawing distinctions in the essence of lawmaking, most legislators classify for one purpose or another with resulting disadvantage to various groups or persons. Thus, if the law neither burdens a fundamental right nor targets a suspect class, we will uphold the legislative classification so long as it bears a rational relation to some legitimate end. The court had no trouble upholding SB 1's age-based distinctions, noting that classifications that turn on age or medical use are subject to only rational basis review. The court has long placed gender classifications in an intermediate class, applying heightened scrutiny to laws that may rely on stereotypes or generalizations, but also recognizing the fundamental reality that sex differences are real and that the law must reflect reality, as National Review's editorial on the case noted back in December. They said the people who wrote and ratified the 14th Amendment at the noontide of the Victorian age would have been baffled by the claim that they were creating a constitutional right for children who are confused about their sex to take drugs and make irreversible changes to their bodies. Yeah, they would think that was weird. If the court takes seriously the original public meaning of equal protection clause, this case is no contest. Unlike Title VII of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, which was at issue in Bostock v. Clayton County, the Equal Protection Clause says nothing about sex discrimination. It has long been read into the bar irrational distinctions on the basis of sex for reasons similar to why it bars racial classifications. But while legal distinctions on the basis of race are irrational in all but a very few narrowly circumscribed situations, the courts have long recognized the common sense reality that was obvious in 1868 and remains obvious to most Americans today. Sex differences are real. They have important consequences, and never more so than it matters in biology, medicine, and reproduction. Humanity could not exist without those differences. As today's decision illustrates, there are still many dissenters from reality, but they are a minority of the court. Roberts, who noted that the court in 1979 had allowed insurance programs to give different treatments to pregnancy-related disabilities, even though only biological women can become pregnant, was having none of it. So this court has never suggested that mere reference to sex is sufficient to trigger heightened scrutiny. Such an approach, moreover, would be especially inappropriate in the medical context. Some medical treatments and procedures are uniquely bound up in sex. The Food and Drug Administration itself recognizes that research has shown that biological differences between men and women, differences due to sex chromosome and sex hormones, may contribute to variations seen in safety and efficacy of drugs, biologics, and medical devices. Indeed, the agency frequently approves drugs for use by only one sex, such as breast cancer and HIV treatments. In the medical context, the mere use of sex-based language does not sweep a statute within the reach of heightened scrutiny. And it goes on. There's quite a bit left of the article, but we'll want to see some. Let me jump down. Let me jump down to some of the concurring stuff. So some people wrote concurring opinions and disagreed a little bit with it. So Barrett and Alito each wrote concurring opinions arguing that transgender status is never a suspect class under the 14th Amendment. Barrett noted that high bar for adding to the very short list of existing suspect classes based on what groups have obvious, immutable, or distinguishing characteristics and historic background of legal discrimination and are minority or politically powerless. We have held that the mentally disabled, the elderly, the poor are not suspect classes, Barrett wrote. In fact, as far as I can tell, we have never embraced a new suspect class under this test. Oh. Thumbs up there, Barrett. Barrett walked through the problems with transgenderism as an immutable or discrete class. The trait of transgenderism is not apparent at birth. The onset of gender dysphoria may occur at different ages. Some people detransition, and even transgender identity is seen by proponents of the ideology as a fluid spectrum. Moreover, constitutionalizing all lawmaking around transgenderism would require courts to oversee all manner of policy choices normally committed to legislative discretion. The question of how to regulate a medical condition such as gender dysphoria involves a host of policy judgments the legislators, not courts, are best equipped to make. To Barrett, deciding the question now would involve more rather than less judicial restraint, not only in medicine, but other areas of legitimate regulatory policy, ranging from access to restrooms to eligibility for boys and girls and sports teams. She also countered the plaintiff's citation of evidence of historic discrimination by pointing out that the relevant constitutional test is discrimination in laws, and laws in this area are almost all new. Alito, concurring only in parts of the majority opinion, agreed that SB 1 did not discriminate on the basis of sex, but he thought there was a strong argument that SB 1 does discriminate on the basis of transgender status. He would nonetheless have resolved the case by holding in agreement with Barrett that such status is not a protected class. Where he departed from Barrett was that he does not think the existing precedents set out a hard and fast test, which Barrett drew from the famous Caroline Products footnote 4 for identifying suspect classes. He also observed that while transgender individuals are a small minority, they had not been excluded from politics, and if anything, members of the group have had notable success in convincing many lawmakers to address their problems given their numbers. Ain't that the freaking truth? And Thomas, who joined the majority opinion, Thomas is my man. Thomas, who joined the majority opinion in its entirety, as well as joining Barrett's concurrence, wrote separately to make a few points in his own. While he continues to reject the logic of both stock, he reiterated his view that its statutory language and analysis simply doesn't apply to the 14th Amendment's distinct language, which never mentions sex. But he saved his real fire for the argument advanced by Prologer and Justice Sonia Sotomayor's dissent, and the court should, as Thomas put it, accord outsized credit to claims about medical consensus and expertise. There are several problems with appealing and deferring to the authority of the expert class. First, so-called experts have no license to countermand the wisdom, fairness, and logic of legislative choices. Second, there is no medical consensus on how best to treat gender dysphoria in children. Third, notwithstanding the alleged experts' view that young children can provide informed consent to irreversible sex transition treatments, whether such consent is possible is a question of medical ethics that states must decide for themselves. Fourth, there are particularly good reasons to question the expert class here, as recent revelations suggest that leading voices in this area have relied on questionable evidence and have allowed ideology to influence their medical guidance. Taken together, this case serves as a useful reminder that the American people and their representatives are entitled to disagree with those who hold themselves out as experts. Whether major medical organizations agree with the result of Tennessee's democratic process is irrelevant. Quoting Sotomayor's dissent, to hold otherwise would permit elite sentiment to distort and stifle democratic debate under the guise of scientific judgment, and would reduce judges to mere spectators in constructing our Constitution. Yeah. In politically contentious debates over matters shrouded in scientific uncertainty, Thomas concluded courts should not assume that self-described experts are correct. They tried to pull out some experts say this, experts say that during the pandemic when they were arguing to when the liberal judges were trying to argue to limit people's different freedoms and liberties and so on. That was a dark time. And then obviously a lot of experts were wrong and people were lying about stuff. And like people were like, oh, the mask save lives. They're doing all this stuff and the mask didn't really work. And like, oh, you got to get the jab. Okay, but you can still spread it. And we don't need to get to a whole COVID rehash today. But I'm not saying that we shouldn't trust experts. But you have to, at the end of the day, decide if you're going to give them that trust, especially when your life might be on the line, your livelihood may be on the line, the well-being of your children may be on the line. The experts could be politically motivated. For example, there's different critical scholars who have all this expertise in biblical knowledge, but they have a twisted view of the Bible and how they look at it. For example, like they'll assume things that are prophetic in the Bible aren't actually prophetic, but like, oh, maybe they said this would happen then because it was written at a different time or it was altered. It's like, or supernatural things happen in the Bible and it was prophetic, but okay. Like there's different kind of biases they're taking to the text, but there's this one guy, Dan McKellen. He has a YouTube channel. He's really big on TikTok, and he has a lot of atheist followers. And I'm not saying everything that he says is wrong, but some of his videos are so like, how did you get that? And then he's very progressive, very left leaning. He actually tried to run for office as a Democrat in Utah once, and he's pro-choice. He's pretty far left, but you could just see that he has so much political motivations like seeping out of him. But he'll always say that he prefers data over dogma, but he'll address his critics with such dogma. Like he'll allege that Christians who adhere to the ideology that same-sex marriage is sin, and who still hold to that they do that for the purposes of obtaining power, like political power or whatever. And I guess to be mean or whatever too, but he'll attribute all of this motive. I'm like, okay, but maybe they adhere to that because they believe that because they've read the scripture and that's how they've interpreted it, and many other people and scholars have interpreted that information, and it's not because they're evil and they just want to hate people, And so one day I got into an argument with Dan over something that Trump had said. I don't remember all the details of it, but he had clearly it was something like with Trump, and he was calling like some of the illegal aliens who were committing heinous crimes as animals, and people were trying to say that he was like meant that broadly for immigrants. And I'm like, he's clearly talking about people who like kill Laken Riley. Like it's very clear. And he was very stuck on his interpretation. And he's like, there's no other way to interpret this. I'm like, what do you mean? Just look at what was said. And so I like seeing that in real time, because I'm like, maybe you don't know how to read Hebrew to go to the text and look at the original transcripts or whatever, but you can see this in real time and know that their bias is blinding them. So if their bias can blind them on something like this, what kind of damage can they do with something so complicated as like a Hebrew manuscript of the Bible or whatever? So there are people who go out there and they learn a lot and they get educated, but you can be an educated fool, or you could be an educated person with a skewed, warped sense of reality because you have so much bias attached to it, So you have to be careful when you do listen to experts and just kind of know who you're talking to, and look at different sources yourself. a lot of these people who will swear by this transgender medicine are ideologues themselves, and they're emotionally invested in seeing the stuff down. And that's why there were certain studies that people tried to block from being released, because it had information in there that they didn't want the world seeing, and they didn't want to turn back different policies and stuff in place. Rachel Levine, he didn't want and he was an assistant health secretary. He said dude who believed he's a woman, and Babylon B got like banned from Twitter from calling him man of the year or whatever until Elon bought it. He didn't want recommended like ages for like transgender care for minors, and there was a big discussion, and some of the people who were like still pro transgenderism stuff, and they're like, okay, if we remove age recommendations for when people should get hormones and other things like that, won't it just make us look worse if we're not giving any kind of recommendations implying that they could have them at any age? And so that those conversations ended up getting out there, and the New York Times reported on it, and then I guess maybe the administration was a little embarrassed by it because they tried to walk it back and say that they didn't approve of of like the minor stuff, but they totally do or totally did. I'm so glad that they're gone. So anyway, a bit of good news today. We'll see what kind of backlash or repercussions there are over it, but it's definitely a win. So good stuff. Thank goodness for the Supreme Court and the conservative majority. I hope Thomas lives a lot longer, but I don't know. He's up there, and so is Alito. It just makes me sad. It makes me sad. Anyway, let's jump to the Whoopi Goldberg stuff, because this is from flipping madness. Oh, I just scrolled through my feed and I saw this stupid thing from Mark Ruffalo. He made me mad last night too, but maybe we'll address the Mark Ruffalo thing. But I gotta show you guys Whoopi. I gotta show you this Whoopi video. If you haven't seen it, it's making the rounds. Okay, so a little warning. Sometimes when I do play stuff from ABC, this clip is about 3 minutes long. Sometimes I'll get dinged during the live. If it shuts down for a second, if you're on YouTube, just come back. It'll stop when I stop playing it or streaming it or whatever. I don't think, since it's only 3 minutes, that it will do that, but I just wanted to give a fair warning. So this clip here is making the rounds for reasons that I think will be obvious.
And it's slow.
Oh, just a little background. They are talking about Iran and how bad things are in Iran.
And it's slow.
But let's just remember too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today,
I'm sorry,
is nothing compared to the United States.
Hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step foot during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Toronto and killed for
I'm sorry.
No, I can't have my hair showing. I can't wear a skirt. I can't have my arms out.
I'm telling you,
So Whoopi, it's gonna get worse than this. But you have her co-host trying to talk about an Iranian woman who was killed because she didn't want to wear her hijab, and she's like, well, things are bad. They used to hang black people and all. Like there used to be some terrible, horrible things that happen in this country, but as they're saying, like, we're talking about modern day in Iran, and things have going on. People who have just been harmed and killed, and they're suffering. Women are suffering. And if they went over there just wearing what they're wearing right now, it would be an issue. It would be a problem. Their lives would be in danger. And Whoopi's just like, well, you're not Black, you don't get it. Like that's going to be her takeaway from this conversation. And she's so in her own world. They're ignoring commentary about women who have suffered and died in Iran. It's just really crazy. Let's keep going.
I literally said it was up to the Iranian people.
Yes,
it is up to them.
And that's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good. Whoever does it, it's not good.
That was a moment I just, after listening to the first part and getting to that part with Whoopi, these women will, while women in other countries live in oppressive regimes and have very limited rights and freedoms, they'll flip out if they can't unalive. I don't know. I'm not on TikTok. I don't understand alive. If they can't kill their children for the sake of improving their lifestyle, not medical issues, but improving their lifestyles. And Whoopi herself is guilty of that crime. Well, it's not a crime, but she did have an abortion. I don't know how many, but people will say that it's not murder because they choose to see the preborn differently. So that, like, I don't think you just think murder is wrong because people are different, Whoopi. I don't, because you advocate for all the time. But it gets more absurd. It gets more absurd. I don't want to get distracted by an abortion rant today. There's crazy stuff going on besides that.
So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're Black.
Not for everybody.
Not if you're Black.
Not if you're Black. Not if you're Black. Not if you're Black. Not if you're. First of all, you don't speak for all Black people, and even if a lot of people decided that that's what they believed, you could do man on the street. Like, would you rather live in the United States today, or would you rather be shipped to Iran? I don't think you're going to find a lot of Black people who are like, ship me to Iran. I don't think that's going to be the case, Whoopi. I don't. And even if I don't think anyone would probably say ship me to Iran. But even if people were ignorant enough to say, no, it's worse being in America than being in Iran, people can be wrong. Maybe that's what they believe. But people believe stupid, ignorant things all of the time. And they're talking about real people, real women who have been killed in Iran. And they're like, well, these things happen in America to the different people. We are so hungry for race hoaxes and all sorts of things. Bubba Wallace, they found a rope in his garage, and that was a big thing. I knew that story didn't make any sense. If I was a race car driver, people would have just been mad at me because I'm like, I'm not marching with you. Let's do an investigation. This sounds stupid. I don't like. I will march with you if it's real. Let's figure it out if this is true, or let's just, it's a garage. It's possible that it's a rope and it's a pole, like a what, there's just other possibilities that someone wanted to make a statement about hanging you, bro. Okay, Jesse Smollett. As Sonny sits there and people believed that ignorant story that never made any sense if you just thought about it a little bit. I'm sorry if you fell for the hoax. I'm sorry if you fell for the hoax, but it never made any sense. But they're like, oh, he's Black and he's gay, and they said it was MAGA country in Chicago. Okay. Okay. No, the story was always dumb, and they just elevated because they're so hungry for racial hoaxes. I'm not saying that real racism doesn't happen. But the Biden administration wanting to forgive loans of farmers who weren't white, that was racist. That was racism happens. Black conservatives face racism all the time. People call them racial slurs and all sorts of things because they're mad about how they think. Did you guys hear that the gospel singer CeCe Winans, there's people who want to cancel her because of who she voted for? I don't even know if she voted for Trump. I don't know. That's maybe not a bad assumption, but people are like, let's cancel CeCe Winans. You're not canceling one of the queens of gospel who's had crossover for a long time, by the way. But people get so offended. People are going after Mario Lopez right now on his social media, just leaving all kinds of comments because they don't like him not speaking up enough, and they're like, "Oh, you're not a real Mexican. How dare you stay silent?" And all kinds of nonsense. So it's not that people aren't mistreated in the United States of America, but Whoopi even will go on to acknowledge it's the greatest country in the world. Or it's a great country. Like, so why would you think that Black people would be like, oh yeah, I'd rather be in Iran. It's worse to be in America than it is here. Or they're the same. No, there's not a Muslim country in the world that I would rather be in. Are you crazy? I don't, if you go back in time, like, I still wouldn't want to be in those countries. No, this is so ignorant, and it's so. Let's watch some more. It's just so ignorant. Sorry, Whoopi is so privileged. She's so freaking privileged. Not just to live in the United States of America, that's a blessing all in itself. To live in this time period in the United States of America is a blessing all in itself. To have the career that she's had, the success that she's had for so long. It's not like she struck gold yesterday. She is like a matriarch of Hollywood, especially Black Hollywood. She's had an extraordinary career. Even though she had to date white guys who did blackface, she's had an extraordinary life. Okay. I'm not saying she didn't have struggles and trials and tribulations and didn't face discrimination. I'd put money on it. Okay. I won't argue with that. A lot of people have faced discrimination. I could name different things that I've been through, or my dad's been through, stories that he had, different tension moments with police officers and other things like that. I could, but he still wouldn't rather be in Iran. He's been to other Muslim nations where he was in danger for preaching the gospel, where the Christians with him were armed with serious firepower in case people came to kill him. And or not even like he went to Nigeria in 2000, and man, he came back home, was ready to literally kiss the ground just being home again. And those people wanted to come to America. They said it sounded amazing. There was one guy who joked about how his ancestors should have submitted to slave catchers so he could have been in the United States by now. What a crazy thing to joke about. But they just thought America was so amazing. Hearing about it. There's a reason why so many people want to come here. And now Nigeria is crazy with the sort of persecution that's going on. Christians being killed all the time. Okay. But she's so privileged. And to sit there and say, oh, well, it's the Black people. She, beyond all of her success as an actress, she gets paid to sit there on The View and say her stupid opinions all the time. All the time. She does not have good opinions. She does not have good opinions. She does. They spew their ignorant nonsense all of the time. I still think Sunny is the worst among them all. But Whoopi is bad. I don't know if Whoopi is 2 or if Joy is 2, Because Joy be saying some off the wall stuff. I don't think Whoopi can dethrone Sunny for me. Because I feel like Sunny ought to be smarter than some of the stuff that she be saying, but she be wilding out. But this is so ignorant, just so in your own zone about your own feelings, just projecting it out everywhere to a point where it's just warping reality and nothing makes sense.
Do not anyone at this table should get it wrong.
Let me tell you about being in this country. This is the greatest country in the world. But yeah, I know that. And we all know that. But every day we are worried. Do we have to be worried about our kids? Are our kids going to get shot because they're running through somebody's neighborhood? They are not big deals. And I don't mean to say they're not big deals to you, because that's not what I meant.
And they are not doing well there either. They are not doing well in Iran. They are not educated. They cannot property. They cannot leave them.
I'm talking about here.
Nobody wants to diminish the very real problems we have in this country. That is no one's intent. But I think it's important we remember there are places much darker than this country and people who deserve rights.
Not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way. Listen, I'm sorry. You know, when you think about the fact that we got the vote in 1965. And
okay, they don't have free and fair elections in Iran. It's not even the same universe.
Yeah, I just love her face, like 1965, bro. We are talking about 2025 today in Iran, and what these people go through, and her saying there's dark places, or like darker places than here, and Whoopi's like, not to everybody. There are some dark and terrible things that go on in this country. There are women who are sex trafficked and abused and beaten, and there are minors who are abused, who go through such significant personal hell. There are people who are in the streets who do fear for the lives of their children, and they have mayors and governors and different people who will not crack down on crime hard enough. There's people who I played a clip of someone who had a jewelry store and they broke in and stole their stuff during the LA riots. While all these people are going around saying, well, they're just peacefully protesting. And their uninsured jewelry store just got freaking robbed. And you're like, well, you just think it's property, so it's no big deal. Yeah, there's some really bad stuff in this country. I'm sickened by the amount of children that we decide to kill everywhere. We are not saints by any stretch of the imagination. No. But there's a difference than living in a system of oppression like people do in Iran. I've seen so many videos of people from Iran saying things like, just puzzled by some of the rhetoric they're seeing from some of these really woke Americans. And they don't necessarily approve of like Israel, but they don't like the regime that's over them. So I don't know what they're going to decide at the end of the day of how they're going to progress forward, if they're going to, fight to change things. But the liberty they have to sit there in what they wear, they couldn't just go over in Iran and not cover themselves up. And, and she's talking about, well, we didn't have the right to vote, or we didn't have this back then, and way back in the day. We're talking about 2025, modern day. And there are people who are extra afraid. I just saw a video with Officer Brandon Tatum, and he was talking to someone, a Hispanic young man, and he was complaining. The Hispanic young man was talking about police brutality and how many people the police killed. And so Tatum asked him, like, well, he mentioned Compton. He's like, how many people did the police kill in Compton, like last year? Or how many unarmed black people were killed? And then he ended up saying a year, by the way. And he said 90,000. And he's like, you think 90,000 Black people have been unalived by the police? And he's like, well, I mean all people, not just Black people. And he's like, you think the police killed 90,000 people last year? If you are so skewed in your mind that you believe those sorts of things, maybe you would think our country is just the worst, and you would be hyper fearful. But just because you believe something doesn't make it true. Let me see if I have this graphic that I used to show you guys all the time about police shooting statistics. So the number of like police shootings unarmed Black men is around like 20, if even, a year. And so these people were asked how many they thought it was. And there are people who thought they were in the thousands. And the more conservative you are, the more right about this issue you were. So this was just really an interesting table to me. So if you believe that the lie that BLM was putting out there, that the police are going around hunting people, like, yeah, I could understand you being just absolutely terrified. But that just because you believe something doesn't mean that your belief is justifiable. It could just mean that you're ignorant. It could just mean that you're wrong. It could be that you were fed bad information, that you were fed propaganda, that you believe the wrong people, listen to the wrong people. And if Whoopi Goldberg is one of those people that you listen to, then you're gonna be led astray. Her and Sonny. Yeah. And Miss Whoopi Goldberg, who is so oppressed, who went after I don't know if it's fair to say she went after, but she had mentioned on air. Do you guys recall when she believed that a bakery didn't want to bake her a dessert because of her political ideology? And then the bakery was like, no, we had to decline to make her order because we had issues with our boiler. And so they were they had all this backlash, calls from Whoopi Goldberg saying on a national platform, alleging that they discriminate against her based on her ideology. It was pretty wild. But they want to be victims so bad. So bad. Like, again, nobody would want to go to Tehran.
People out of their house. Women.
You know what? There's no way I can make you understand.
Let me try something. It's like try to reverse roles with a Black person in this country, let's say, because I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Just try to understand from their point of view. From that point of view, this country does not do them well. Does not go for them.
I completely acknowledge that.
And we shouldn't compare atrocities.
If you're talking about Iran, of course, is doing worse things. But relatively speaking, it feels bad.
Okay, but I think you know that Iran is significantly
I guess we're going to come back and talk. We're going to come back and talk more about this.
And I know what happened.
And
it's like you could never understand. You could never understand because you're, or maybe you're wrong, Whoopi. Maybe you're ignorant. Maybe you're just wrong. Again, people can believe what they want to believe. That doesn't mean it's rooted in reality. Like people for sure thought Jussie Smollett had been, attacked after he got a Subway sandwich in a polar vortex by some MAGA hat dude saying this is MAGA country. Like that. And so many people tweeted out, oh, this is a result in living in Donald Trump's America. It fed the narrative. So they wanted to believe it. They wanted to believe it. That doesn't mean it was anywhere near the realm of reality. But I'm not surprised. trying to remember the whole details of when she got suspended from The View. I know I wrote about it, but it happened a while ago. If someone can like knows off the top of their head, for refresher. You can let me know. I'm trying to search on my site. It is not coming up easily on Google. Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head, but she had just said it was something, I had already mentioned this earlier, but it was something along the lines of she was trying to say that Hitler didn't necessarily target the Jews because they were Jewish or something along those lines, or didn't understand that being Jewish is a religion, but it's also an ethnicity. And she just couldn't get it because it wasn't, to her, it was so outside of the realm as what she perceived in far as race goes. Gosh, I wanted, I wish I remembered all the details, but she offended a lot of people, and then she went, I guess they wanted her to do damage control, and she went on one talk show, late night show that night, and her comments weren't any better, and she ended up being suspended for like 2 weeks from The View, and people wanted her fired. I'm like, they're not firing her because she gets paid to say stupid opinions. That's her job. They don't pay her to say smart things. If they wanted someone to say smart things on that panel, they wouldn't have Sonny and Whoopi and Joy there. They wouldn't have them there. Last thing I want to talk to you guys about, there's a clip from Tucker Carlson that he posted. Oh, okay. Kit Kat said that she said that him going after the Jews was about man's inhumanity to man, not race. And she didn't get that he legit thought that they were a different race. Yeah, I remember about the race. But yeah, I remember that line about the man's inhumanity to man. And it just seemed like she didn't want to accept that there was a racial element to it because she doesn't see them as it being a race. So I don't know. So maybe she just didn't want to accept that racism was committed against them. So her saying what she did on the show, it's not a shock. I don't think it's definitely not out of character. But it is pretty amazing in a very bad way. Anyway, last thing I want to show you guys is a clip of Tucker Carlson that he posted. I haven't seen his full interview. I guess it should be out with him and Ted Cruz, or maybe it's I'm not sure if it's all out yet, but he posted this last night as a tease, and Ted Cruz condemned him for doing this little tease video. And he's like, go watch the whole thing. And people are just like, bro, why'd you even go on and talk to him? Now, Tucker's had some very, we'll say, interesting takes as of late regarding just international politics, period. But I've had concerns about Tucker Carlson for a while for various reasons. But I'll play this clip because he like does a little gotcha game here that's really silly to me.
How many people live around, by the way?
I don't know the population
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people living around?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I Googled it. It was 90 million. I don't know if it's 92. I don't know what stat he's looking at, but so maybe he's wrong, but his staff I'm sure his staff, or maybe he looked it up and got that number so he could do a quiz game with Ted Cruz, and it is a debate tactic, like Debate Me Bros will do it for different topics, you know. Maybe they'll break down into like deep philosophical jargon or whip out a bunch of statistics or whatever to and not kind of dig at the core issues of the differences or whatever. So he's trying to just belittle him as an expert in the position because he doesn't know the exact number of people in Iran, which, you know, I don't see is a highly relevant, but he's doing it to diminish him.
Could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, and by the way, he you know was stuck up for like Dave Smith and Demean Douglas Murray, who when Douglas Murray went on Joe Rogan's show with Dave Smith and Murray, which he didn't say you couldn't speak on things if you weren't an expert, but he was confused on why Joe Rogan had so many like people with skewed and wrong opinions on his show rather than some experts on it. And he ended up saying to Dave Smith, he's like, well, he asked him a question. He's like, well, when was the last time you've been to the region? He's like, I haven't been. He's like, you haven't been? And I'm on Murray's side about the issue, but his accent, I guess, when he's like, you've never been, he just stressed it out, was, I don't know, maybe it was so, I don't know, pretentious or whatever is the right word for it, but it just, it's funny. Even if you're pro Murray, it was still funny to hold out that B in the E's, but but you know, people were mad at Murray for saying bringing up that he had never been to the region, and Tucker is here trying to do this expert class game with Ted Cruz.
It's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's, because it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country.
I didn't say I don't know anything about.
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay.
It's not even, you don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
They're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that,
we're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here, because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay, so he's doing Tucker face, going back to like high form that he, you know, I guess pretty much did on Fox News. But what's funny about this is you haven't seen really Tucker push on folks in a minute. And when he first started like his X program, he had on this guy who allegedly had sex with Barack Obama back in the day. And that's what the guy had claimed or whatever. So when Tucker introduced him, I mean, I believe he had him on because the story would get him views and clicks or whatever. And he had him on, and when he introduced him to his audience, he mentioned that he's like, he even took a lie detector test. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting tidbit of information. And then I decided to look up the results of the test, and he didn't pass the test. Now, Tucker brought up this guy and he took a lie detector test to further his credibility, and then didn't mention anything else about the test. Granted, he didn't say that he passed the test, but would your assumption be that he maybe passed the test? And wouldn't you find it to be important information to mention that he didn't pass the test. It might be admirable that he passed the test. You could, I guess, fail a lie detector test. It's not a foolproof science, I guess. But why bring it up and not mention to your audience that he didn't pass the test? And then why not mention that in the interview? Why not push back against him at all? A man who's alleging to have had a homosexual relationship with the former president of the United States and have done drugs and other stuff with him. And there wasn't like any sort of pushback. You know, it was very un-Tucker. And I used to watch Tucker all the time on Fox. I used to DVR his program if I wasn't home. And I come, oh my gosh, I gotta get home and watch Tucker Carlson. And then I saw him at Trump's inauguration, at the inaugural ball back in 2017. And I was fangirling. I waited in line to get a picture with Tucker and talk to him a little bit. It was a, you know, big night. I was very excited. And I saw Tucker a couple of years, maybe like 2 years ago or something. Because our pack in that I work with invited him out to speak. That was like right during that time when he had that interview with the guy Obama allegedly slept with. And so I just noticed that he will I just don't think his journalistic integrity is sort of there anymore. I think he does what he does for views and so on. You know, the way he also started to attack Ben Shapiro. He's like, oh, he talks about different countries. How can you talk about different countries? What and different things going on across the world while there's people dying of fentanyl? And then he like goes to Russia and just praises them for the grocery stores and their train system and stuff, their subways. And you know, he's just been playing a lot of games for I don't know what all the reasons are. Some people are like, oh, he's being paid by Qatar and stuff. I'm like, he already has a lot of money. To me, I mentioned this the other day. To me, it would be crazy to sell yourself out to be a mouthpiece like that. But I mean, I guess if you're willing to do it for little money, you know, people might be willing to do it even if they have money themselves. I don't know. I don't know what all the reasons are. And when it comes to geopolitical politics, it can be very vast and complicated to understand. But I just think back to that other example that I just shared about the man who allegedly slept with Barack Obama and how he didn't really do his due diligence in that story and even presented information in a way that I found to be manipulative and dishonest, because we can just kind of see that up front and observe it. That's a less complicated thing to grasp than, you know, nuclear bombs and stuff. Ted Cruz, and even when Ted Cruz here started to answer the question about the different populations of Iran, he's like, what's the percentage? And just throwing different stuff out there and doing his Tucker laugh to diminish Ted Cruz and to trip him up and stuff. You know, Tucker's no dummy, but he's got different tactics, and he deployed them when he was on Fox all the time to you know, go after dumb liberals. So I don't know how the full thing was, and you know, if Ted Cruz ended up demolishing him throughout the whole conversation, but you know, Tucker had some predictions about things that would happen, about how, you know, gas would go up and $30 of gasoline and stuff. He wrote this not too long ago. And then there's the question of the war itself. Iran might not have nukes, but it has fearsome arsenal of ballistic missiles, many of which are aimed at the U.S. military installations in the Gulf, as well as our allies and the critical energy infrastructure. The first week of the war with Iran could easily kill thousands of Americans. It could also collapse our economy as surging oil prices trigger unmanageable inflation. Consider the effects of $30 a gallon of gasoline. the percentage of oil that they supply is pretty small. I did notice gas went up a little bit. I don't even know if it's about this. But the second week, and by a little bit, I mean like 20 cents. I don't like that it went up 20 cents. Don't get me wrong, but but it had been, it makes that kind of jump anyway sometimes. So I don't even know if it has anything to do with Iran. But the second week of the war could be even worse. Iran is at Iraq or Libya or even North Korea. While it's often described as a rogue state, Iran has powerful allies. It's now part of a global bloc called BRICS, which represents the majority of the world's landmass, population, economy, and military power. Iran has extensive military ties with Russia. Russia already like tapped out, so they weren't doing anything. It sells the overwhelming majority of its oil exports to China. Iran isn't alone. An attack on Iran could very well become a world war. We'd lose. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. America doesn't really lose wars. We just decide to lose heart, and then collapse ensues, I guess. we have to beat us. Our enemies seem to know that. But yeah, he's talking down to Tucker, and I mean Tucker's talking down to Ted Cruz when Tucker has said some wild and wrong things about what will happen, and he's been wrong, and I think he'll continue to be wrong. Anyway, I don't see anyone coming to Iran's aid like that. I don't see Trump as someone who wants to do a forever war. And people were flipping out, when Soleimani was killed and when the embassy was moved to Jerusalem. People preached all kinds of doomsday stuff, and we're all still here. I'm more concerned about the radicalization of some of these activists. There's this guy on TikTok. He has a huge following, and he's just like parroting all kinds of crazy stuff and justifying the Elias Rodriguez guys, who was a homegrown crazy activist who shot those two people at the embassy. So I guess I'm concerned about our crazy people here. I don't know how many people might be waiting in the wings to commit acts of terror who are from Iran or acting on behalf of Iran, but we got some other issues to work out for sure. Anyway, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the site because it does cost a stream. Run the site, all the good stuff. You guys can support it very much. To appreciate you guys. I do encourage you guys to check out some of my merch that's available. You guys can also check out some of my books that are available on Amazon. There's a link in the description that will take you to some of my books so you guys can read it or read about them and decide if you would like to get any. So God bless you guys, and I will see you